The penultimate weekend of Championship football did not disappoint whatsoever. What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Matchday 45 of the Championship. Now this is a mad week of Championship football. We've got a midweek game today against Fulham and Luton at 5:15, and tomorrow we've got potentially the decider of the promotion. Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest. It was supposed to be played in December. If you remember, it was the postponed game that Forest were not happy about whatsoever. But finally, it's been brought forward to this day and it's a promotion decider. I mean, unbelievable, isn't it? So we'll be talking about the 11 games that took place in the weekend, and we'll be talking about basically a small sneak preview of what I think will happen between Bournemouth and Forest. If you guys like what we see, please give the video a like. It does tremendously help the channel. Let's aim for 20 likes, I'd be appreciative. Please do hit the subscribe button. It really does help support this channel. It really does. And please share this channel to as many people as you can, because the more shares that happen, the more likely this channel will grow into bigger and better things. I'd be absolutely appreciative. But without any further ado, let's start talking through what happened in this weekend's Championship games. So Mark Warburton's last home game as QPR manager ended in a defeat to the hands of Sheffield Wednesday, which they strengthened their chances of getting into the top 6 with a very convincing 3-1 win today. And I gotta say, it was deserved. For what I saw in that game, Sheffield United were fantastic, and you wouldn't have believed that this was a team that hadn't been able to win away from home in their last 7 matches. They looked right up for this, and it was very impressive. And what was evident to me is that Sheffield United did have plenty of chances in that first half. They squandered them, but what that did, that invited QPR to roam forward and to have some chances of their own. And what QPR did, and what we have seen from QPR from time to time again, yes, they missed chances as well, but when you give someone the likes of Charlie Austin especially the space, he would 9 times out of 10 hit the target, and if anything, score a goal from that as well. And he did exactly that. Albert Adoma doing really well, getting past Ender Stevens in the right hand side. A cross comes in, Austin with a powerful header, Fotheringham can't get anywhere near it, makes it 1-0 to QPR, and QPR only had 2 shots in their box in that first half, and it ended up that one of those shots was a goal. So Sheffield United really couldn't feel sorry for themselves. You know, they definitely were playing the better football, but in that second half, it definitely, what Paul Heckingbottom said, you'd wonder what he said as well, but clearly whatever he said, they went out with more intensity, they went up a couple of gears, and eventually, whilst they had to be quite patient for it, the 54th minute they had to wait for their equaliser, they really started to get their confidence in every move they made. Corner came in and it was pinball in the box, and Ilman Ndiaye, right place, right time, finally gets a strike past Mahoney, where him previously made an outrageous save within a couple of minutes before that, and we thought, is it going to be Sheffield United's night? But it turns out it did. Ndiaye scored that equaliser, and for the lead for Sheffield United, it came from a free kick that was conceded in the right hand side. Free kick came in, and Jack Robinson, a powerful header, hooked on by Basham to make it 2-1 to Sheffield United. And then even to increase their lead a little bit more, a brilliant cross comes in, and Conor Hourihane with an outrageous first touch to get the ball into the net to make it 3-1. And I tell you what, that third goal was crucial because it helped Sheffield United's goal difference as well. And due to recent events of this weekend that we'll talk about, Blackburn obviously lost, so they've now killed Blackburn's chance of getting into the top 6. Middlesbrough won, so Middlesbrough still have a chance to overtake them, but they've closed the gap on Luton, and now Luton have got a lot of pressure to see if they can get a good result against Fulham tonight. And of course with Millwall, because their goal difference is so far behind from Sheffield United, that second goal especially really gave them a really good lead over Millwall. So it would have to take a really major collapse against Fulham for Sheffield United not to get into the top 6 now for me. As with QPR, it's just been a very disappointing second half of the season. Reminds me a bit of Chelsea, having a great first half of the season, but then in the second half, just really not been able to recover from the standard since, and from only 3 wins in 16 games, that is why QPR are falling down the table, and if they're not careful, they can even fall down the bottom half by the end of the season. Preston were victorious against Barnsley, a 3-1 away victory at Oakwell, a game that didn't really mean too much for either side. You know, we especially saw Barnsley, a heavily rotated side, getting youngsters like Aidan Marsh a good chance, and what a day it was for him actually to open scoring for Barnsley, and he's got to thank Adebayo for getting that goal for him, because the skill and the touches that he managed to do to wither past Whiteman was incredible. I don't know how he managed to do it. It was something like an example of him defying the laws of physics for how he kept the ball into their penalty area, but he did so. And Marsh, you know, it was poor defending by Vandenberg, but he gets a very nice strike, makes it 1-0 Barnsley. However, only 7 minutes later, Daniel Johnson equalises, and that's disappointing about Barnsley, that they cannot hold a lead for long. Daniel Johnson scores with a brilliant bit of link-up play between Reece Jacobson and Daniel Johnson himself in the left-hand side. Brilliant strike past Walton to make it 1-1. And after that equaliser, it did feel very comfortably that Preston were the better team. 19 shots to 15, 8 shots on target to 5. They definitely were a lot better, supplying the ball, 70% of possession as well. Barnsley were very much on the counter-attack, and that's how they got many of their chances in this game. Unfortunately for them, they didn't have a lot of luck from it. Second half, Preston continued once again to really pro forward, and Daniel Johnson with an outrageous second goal. He scored a fantastic couple of goals, but his second goal especially in the top left corner of a goal. Fantastic position from this part, and Alan Brown supplied him with that to make it 2-1. And then even then, Maurice Jacobson going to the scoring, where he definitely should have scored at one moment before he scored. He was 1-1 with an outrageous bit of play actually. But then he managed to get his third with a more of a difficult strike. He did really well to get past Walton and to squeeze in a very tight angle to get the goal into the net, which made it 3-1 to Preston. And it's very made things interesting. Daniel Johnson with 2 goals, Reece Jacobson with a goal and assist. So both worked really well in this game. And I think those are 2 players that I think Preston should keep on. If Preston definitely want to move on and progress next year, I definitely think changing the defence is key. And especially if they don't keep all of their loan deals, the likes of Archer, Vandenberg and Niverson, they're definitely going to have to invest in that low market again to try and get some like-for-like replacements. As with Barnsley, I mean, does it really matter right now? They're on 30 points. It's just been a very disappointing season for them, hasn't it? And then this game saw Blackburn destroy their chances of getting into the top 6 entirely by losing 3-0 to Bournemouth, who needed to win pretty much, especially with the fact that Nottingham Forest managed to win pretty comfortably against Swansea at the same time. Now, any nerves that Bournemouth fans had in that game were completely evaporated when Dominic Solanke scored his 30th goal of the season. I mean, he's not far away from equaling Ivan Toney's record, where of course he was the top goal scorer of the championship. For the fact we could have 2 championship strikers overtake the previous top goal scorer's championship record is a joke. To have that level of quality, especially in our attacking roles in the championship this season. Solanke scored the first goal, making it 1-0 to Bournemouth. But Blackburn did pose a threat, but one thing that was disappointing, I didn't really see that threat being carried from the rest of the team apart from Brereton Diaz. He came closest twice, once in each half, one time hitting the post, and then another time forcing an outrageous save by Mark Travis, which I think he has really improved his performance, Mark Travis, very recently there. And then it stayed 1-0 for a lot of the game, and I think you can definitely tell, despite Bournemouth, I think, being relatively comfortably the better team, they didn't have a lot of the ball, so they were allowing Blackburn to try and break them down a little bit. So it was an interesting change of tactics by Bournemouth for them not having a lot of the ball, but they did manage to have patient play, and they did eventually get into spaces. Siriki Dembele, I think, deserves a big shout out. I actually think he's played a really integral part in that game. He made a blistering run to force a brilliant save from Kaminsky and a goal line clearance in the end, which could have definitely put the game out of sight. But the person who did put the game out of sight was Philip Billing in 2 goals for 9 minutes. 2 really well worked goals on his part as well to make it 3-0 to the Cherries. And what that has done now is that it has actually put every bit of emphasis on their midweek game against Forest. However, they actually have been playing relatively well away from home. That is the third consecutive away game where Bournemouth has scored at least 3 goals, which is outrageous that they're now scoring this many goals. We were talking about Bournemouth struggling for goals, but now they can't stop scoring goals. Are they now getting form at the right time of the season? We'll have to wait and find out and see how both of the teams react in their midweek game. And that's with Blackburn. Obviously, there are increasing rumours that Tony Mowbray is no longer going to be the manager after being manager for, I think, over 5 years in charge of Blackburn Rovers. They'll just have to be very, very careful about who they have to appoint next, and definitely we're going to see the likes of Ben Brereton, Diaz gain interest, Rothwell get interest. There'll be a lot of their players that definitely will be linking with moves away. It could be a really, really tough season for Blackburn next year. In Bloomfield Road between Blackpool and Derby, we saw Derby win by 2-0. Now, I tell you this, with the highlights, you would not have expected the team in white to win that game. It was Blackpool who really had the chances, 17 shots to 9, and the only difference really that Derby managed to edge them was on shots on target, really. Blackpool had 5 corners to Derby's 1 as well, so Blackpool did everything they could, but it just really wasn't their day. They had a penalty, which was definitely gifted with Eboseli fouling James Husband in the box. It was stepped up by Medine, and he missed a penalty. Medine's 100% penalty record ended in the hands of Kelly Roos. It was a very poor penalty on Medine's part, and Eboseli, of course, hugged him afterwards because he got away with murder there. It definitely would have been his fault if Derby fell behind. And it was a pretty dead game, I've really got to say. Blackpool were probing at times, but they really didn't manage to get anywhere. I have to say, Roos in goal was fantastic. I think it was one of his best performances I've seen in a Derby shirt. And then, difference with goalkeepers, we see Maxwell in the other side make an absolute howler from a shot, I believe, by Sibley. And then it was Malcolm Ebewe who had a very easy tap-in to make it 1-0 to Derby. His first senior goal, which is absolutely terrific. And it got even better for Ebewe because he even got the assist for Derby's second goal. Iran Kashin with a header, managing to get his first senior goal for Derby, making it 2-0 to the Rams. It wasn't Derby's best performance, but they got a win, and that win puts them in 22nd, which is a shame for them now, but it gives me a lot of hope and opportunity for Derby that if they've got these youth players stepping into this big moment, I think it's actually a very bold move by Rooney to play these youth players especially, but they produced a great result, and that is all that matters. So with Blackpool, a bit of a puzzling performance. It just really wasn't their day. I mean, they've really got this season wrapped up, haven't they? They can't actually finish any lower than where they are currently positioned right now, so they really don't have a lot to play for. They'll definitely finish at least 16th place in the table. What a home win it was for Bristol City. 5-0 against Hull City, and I tell you this, Bristol City are on an unbeaten run right now. That's 3 wins in their last 5 games, and they're really trying to end the season very, very well. And what we have seen is that when teams end the season quite well, they tend to have a good season. So is Bristol City going to be one of those teams who can have a really good season next year? I mean, for their fans' sake, I hope so, because they've had pretty mediocre seasons for the past maybe even 2 to 3 seasons, I've got to say, when I've been covering Bristol City. Now, Andre Weimann scored 2 goals. I mean, both goals were a thing of beauty. Definitely the first goal could have been avoided if Baxter actually improved his goalkeeping position. He had to step in and goal because Luton have got their first choice goalkeeper, Matt Ingram, as an emergency goalkeeper for a week. So that definitely, you know, really didn't help Hull in this game. Baxter was definitely not covering himself in much glory there. And then Antoine Semenyo got the second goal, and him and Weimann were working so well together. That partnership is really underrated, I've got to say. And then 2 minutes after that, Chris Martin makes it 3. Brilliant build-up play once again in the left-hand side, finding Chris Martin. I mean, defending-wise, it was atrocious by Hull, I've really got to say. Their back 3, especially McLaughlin, who got tackled, which ended up being the 4th goal and the second goal for Chris Martin. He really didn't cover himself in much glory, and McLaughlin's position was poor with Andre Weimann's second goal, but I would have loved to see that goal any day. The delicious chip he put to get past Baxter to make it 5-0. It was absolutely taking the mick, but I absolutely loved that from Andre Weimann there. Great win for Bristol City, their best home win of the season, and we'll see if they can carry on into next year as with Hull. Maybe a little bit of work to do for next season. The game between Cardiff and Birmingham ended as a 1-1 draw. Not really much for me to kind of sum up with this game, to be honest. Birmingham got their goal with a brilliant pass by Lyle Taylor to find Jeremy Bella. And then I felt Birmingham were, I think, the better side for most of the game. I know they didn't have a lot of the ball, but they did force more chances. It was pretty tight, actually, when you looked at the stats there. Eventually, Cardiff did manage to get their breakthrough, where Jordan Graham missed a really, really big chance, you know, for a young 19-year-old, which is a shame for him. But then within minutes later, Etheridge does a moment of madness and gives his former club a penalty. Will Volk steps up, scores past Etheridge and makes it 1-1. Had Etheridge not done that, I would have easily seen Birmingham holding on. And I definitely think it was a good bit of play. Let's not get it wrong, I think, by Wolves and finding Max Walters there. But I definitely think I would have seen the back line covering that. And I would have definitely backed Etheridge to potentially save that shot as well, because he had a pretty good game until that moment there. So it was a very silly couple of points thrown away by Birmingham a little bit. They still find themselves in 20th. Cardiff, they end of a really poor, losing streak, but it's still not a fantastic performance in the end of the season. Coventry and Huddersfield end as a 2-1 away victory to Huddersfield. Now, what this means for Huddersfield now is that they cannot face Nottingham Forest in the semi-finals of the playoffs. It is mathematically impossible. They'll finish at least 4th, and the maximum they can finish is technically still 2nd if results go their way in their final 2 game weeks, but I still see Huddersfield finishing in the top 6 one way or another. And I gotta say, this game, I think, was one of those typical Coventry games where they have many chances. They squandered a lot of them. Hyam had chances. Waghorn had a brilliant chance. Hamer shoot from distance at times. Callum O'Hare went closest to Coventry to scoring before they got a goal themselves. But what I've got to say, despite Huddersfield not really threatening as much as Coventry did and not having a lot of the ball and definitely not forcing as many chances, Coventry had triple the amount of chances than what Huddersfield had in the whole 90 minutes, which is crazy. But they were deadly clinical. And Harry Toffolo from just outside the box in the 45th minute, literally within seconds before the first half whistle going, he whips off a wonder strike like that. And that is the difference. The confidence, the ruthlessness that Huddersfield have this season is on another level. It's absolutely ridiculous. You don't see many clubs putting that out of the bag to be that clutch, especially with the timing of it as well. So, and I think that goal definitely gave Huddersfield the upper hand. It meant Coventry had to really chase the game, and I think that suited Huddersfield a little bit, because in the second half especially, I think Huddersfield had a lot more openings. They actually had a lot more opportunities to test Ben Wilson and goal. Holmes should have definitely scored at the start of the second half when he got around Ben Wilson, but he hit the side netting there. And Ben Wilson and both Lee Nichols both made fantastic saves throughout the game. But Wilson had a moment of madness, a bit similar to Etheridge pulling down Lewis O'Brien after making a terrific save, conceding a penalty for Huddersfield. Basina Andurin, which I'm fantastically, proud of him for him to get his first senior goal for Huddersfield, making it 2-0 to Huddersfield. Great penalty. And then Victor Gyökeres manages to make it 2-1. And I got to say, I think he was the best player of the Coventry team, really making things very tricky for that Huddersfield back line. And it was a brilliant team goal, actually, especially when you looked at the build-up with Hamer and O'Hare in the right-hand side. Brilliant game overall, but it's one of those many examples when Coventry falls short again. And I got to say, I think they'll be a great team next season, Coventry. They really just got to add a couple of players where they've got the experience to take some chances when things are not going their way. As with Huddersfield, I mean, this season's just getting better and better for them, isn't it? Middlesbrough have done all they can to chase after the top 6 as of now with a 3-1 victory over Stoke City. In fact, they've matched Sheffield United's results, so they definitely are matching them at the moment. But what this has done for them now is that they're 2 points behind Sheffield United with 1 game left. They'll be hoping and praying that Sheffield United lose to Fulham and they can beat Preston pretty emphatically to get into that top 6 place. And I gotta say, Matt Crooks, this was his first game, after serving his suspension, and you can just about see how important this guy is to this team. So he provided with 2 goals, and within 2 goals in 4 minutes, I think it really took the game away from Stoke, where they had a good spell of possession at the start of the game, but it was Middlesbrough who were forcing the chances. Matt Crooks scoring the first. It was a brilliant pass by Johnny Housen, actually, to find Matt Crooks in that position to make it 1-0 to Middlesbrough. And Johnny Housen was involved again. His set piece floats into the box and Lewis Baker heads it into his own net to make it 2-0 to Middlesbrough. And as much as we give Matt Crooks credit, I think we've got to give Johnny Housen some credit as well to provide those 2 goals the way that he did. Eventually, the game just kind of leveled out a little bit. Stoke had the odd chance here and there where they actually did go close one time where Luke Daniels made a fantastic save. but then it got to 3-0 from a really good corner actually, and then Del Fry, who was back from his injury, managed to knock the ball available for Matt Crooks to tap the ball into the net to make it 3-0. I mean, clean sheet bonus was completely gone in the 94th minute. Daniels really not making a good effort for having one safe shot, but then from Vrancic, but then Nick Powell managing to finish off his dinner to make it 3-1 in the end. So great win for Middlesbrough. As with Stoke, a bit inconsistent at this part of the season. That's really all I can say, but I think the focus was on Middlesbrough and they got the job done, so it's going to make things very interesting for the final day of the season. Millwall managed to pick up a win against Peterborough, beating them by 3-0. Now they've done all they can at the moment to try and get into the top 6. I personally think it's not going to be easy, because I know it's still mathematically possible, but they will need a 5-goal swing to go their way, and you know, they'll need a Sheffield United side where at home Sheffield United have had 4 clean sheets in their last 6 home games. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Mill to overtake Sheffield United to have a 5-goal swing, but also they're going to have to hope that Middlesbrough don't beat Preston as well, so they'll need a lot of things to go their way to get into the top 6. But great performance overall. I mean, the first goal was controversial, so there was a throw-in awarded to Mill from a foul throw-in, I believe, if I saw the highlights correctly there. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if you did watch the game live, but I think a throw-in was awarded to Mill because of a foul throw-in, or maybe a change of mind for the decision for the referee. But then the throw-in got in, and then the game overall to that point was pretty low, I gotta say. Millwall had a lot of the ball but couldn't really force many chances. Peterborough even went closest when Clark Harris had a shot which was saved by Bilkowski, but he should have done better. But then Afobe took the lead, which, you know, Peterborough didn't really defend it well. Clark Harris doesn't defend it well enough. 1-0 to Millwall, and I gotta say, it was pretty much all Millwall from that point onwards. They went up the gears. They found that extra quality to really take the game away from Peterborough. I know Marriott did have a small chance, you know, when Bilkowski pushed his shot away, but that was really all they had in that second half. It was all Millwall after that. And gotta say, Jed Wallace, what a player he is. Both of the final 2 goals came from his crosses. Within a period of 3 minutes, 2 crosses from Jed Wallace resulting in 2 goals. One from a known goal by Josh Knight, and then one from chance, actually from Saville, which managed to hit the crossbar. But then another cross came in, and then Saville redeemed himself and eventually scored it. So the warning signs were there for Peterborough, but unfortunately they didn't manage it very, very well. They find themselves in 23rd now, funny in the fact that Derby managed to win their game. As with Mill, as I said, I think they've done all they can, but they're going to have to hope for a lot to go their way if they're going to get in the top 6 now. Now, what a win for Forest. I mean, this Swansea team is no pushover. We saw them, you know, give Bournemouth one hell of a game, drawing 3-3 with them, but that is 8 goals conceded by Swansea in their last 2 games. And that is a really big problem for them, I gotta say. Now, it was a really crazy game in terms of the first goal. So Cyrus Christie got an own goal, but then it was mad because eventually a penalty was awarded and it was a straight red card for Christie. But then it turns out that when Christie tried to handle the ball going it from past the line, he got the final touch, which actually pushed the ball over the line, but that meant it was an own goal by Christie, and then the red card was overturned to a yellow card instead. So that was a crazy game and a crazy start actually to this bonkers game. And then within 6 minutes later, Swansea managed to make things even crazier with Michael Obafemi, the man in form, making it 1-1, and that definitely would have got a really big cheer in Bournemouth's crowd, because that would have been around the same time when Solanke scored for Bournemouth as well. So things were going in Bournemouth's favour, but second half, an inspiring performance by Sam Surridge limps Forest over the line. A hat-trick for Sam Surridge, and he scored a fantastic goal. I mean, one of his headers was fantastic, and then his third one, just the accuracy to get in the top corner is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, some of the football they were playing was unbelievable, and even Alex Martin, who got onto the pitch late on when they were 4-1 up, he managed to get a goal of his own. But that back line for Swansea were just completely crumpled apart. It was like a rich tea biscuit, just literally breaking apart so easily. So they definitely need to work on that, Swansea, going forward to next season, because I definitely think the attacking players are actually really good for Swansea. They just need to work on the foundations and the basics of defending. As with Forest, they've really made the game interesting now between them and Bournemouth. We'll see who overcomes in this game, and I'll give my prediction after I talk about this final game. And this final game I'm alluding to is a pretty damn squid game between Reading and West Brom. It ends 1-0 to West Brom. One rare bit of quality by Callum Robinson running down the right-hand side. He finds it to Colin Grant, where Colin Grant actually does a bit of skill, actually, to get past 3 defenders, scores past the goalkeeper to make it 1-0. It's his 16th goal of the season, which you forget that he's actually scored this many goals. But when you consider it, it's quite a big drought compared to what he's had recently. But fair play to him. I think he definitely was having a goal overdue, you know, especially for the fact that he missed a penalty the game before. Fair play to him for actually getting on the score sheet this time. Reading were pretty poor, I've got to say. They didn't have a single shot on target, only 6 shots in that game, but I'm not too surprised. They're already safe, so they're definitely going to be rotating, and they're definitely not going to be having as much intensity as normal, so they definitely have got the job done. As with West Brom, we'll see how high they can finish up the table, because now they're just trying to have a little bit of pride and see if they can finish as high as they can. So that is Matchday 45 done and dusted. Here is what the table looks like after those games. So obviously Fulham and Luton play tonight, and then tomorrow we see Bournemouth play Forest, and by that time we should see every single team play 45 games. Fulham and Bournemouth still top 2, but look how close it is between Bournemouth and Forest. A 3-point gap, plus 34 goal difference for Forest and a plus 33 for Bournemouth. It's going to be very, very tight, I tell you this. Huddersfield, Luton and Sheffield United still in the top 6, but Middlesbrough closing the gap to 2 points. And then when you look at the bottom 3, it is still the same. Derby, Peterborough and Barnsley. So for the final part of this video, I'm actually going to do a full-on prediction in terms of Bournemouth and Forest, because the emphasis of this game is so important. I think it deserves to have its own preview. So when we think about these two teams, you know, they have really actually managed to have a season of 2 halves, you know, considering that Bournemouth went unbeaten in the first half of the season, and in the second half they wavered a little bit, but now they're looking like that they're starting to go on an upwards trajectory with the signings they got in. And I think the signings they got in, the likes of Keeper Moore against Swansea and Siriki Dembele against Blackburn, they're now starting to integrate and improve the squad rather than make things overly complicated and difficult for this Bournemouth team now. So they could literally have found their form just at the right time, but this one game could really make things, you know, very different when we go to the final game week of the season. And with Nottingham Forest's sake, I mean, they're the team in form, 5 wins in 6, and I gotta say, both teams' home records is exemplary. I gotta say, Bournemouth are unbeaten in their last 10 home games. But having said that, they have drawn 3 of their last 3 home games in a row. So they've not been able to win too many home games, but Bournemouth have been able to stay unbeaten for so long. So when you consider those stats, you think, okay, can Bournemouth at least get a draw again? Because actually, I've got to say, I think a draw would be a very ideal result, actually, you know, for Bournemouth. It means that it's in their hands, and they'll have to beat Millwall, where by that time they will be hoping things go their way when they try and get to the top 6. But you would argue that on paper that Forest have got a better game on their hands when they have to play against a Hull City side, where they'll likely still not have Ingram in goal, because Ingram would still be in Luton when they've got to play Reading in the final day of the season. They'll have Baxter, who made, you know, conceded 5 goals, and they'll have to play against them in their last home game of the season, which could be tricky. You know, Hull at home are not necessarily a cakewalk, but definitely Forest have got the better last game than what Bournemouth have got. Gotta say, a draw would be more annoying for Forest, because they're going to have to hope for a lot more things to go their way. Let's say Bournemouth draw their last 2 games, it would be impossible for Forest to actually catch them. So actually, when I think about this, I actually think a draw would be a much better result for Bournemouth than it is for Forest. So it's going to make things really, really tense. Forest will be going for the win. Bournemouth, if they win, they do get automatically promoted. So there's this kind of complicated conundrum that we've got. Are Bournemouth going to go for the win, knowing that if they win, they've definitely confirmed promotion and they can definitely rotate their team against Millwall on the final day? Or are they going to play it safe and conservative, which Scott Parker does tend to do sometimes, and take it to the final day of the season with them having the upper hand still over Forest, and knowing a draw against Millwall will be enough? So that's going to make things very interesting. Tactically, it's going to be very, very interesting between Parker and Steve Cooper. And they've not played against each other. You know, when Forest actually played against Bournemouth last, it was actually one of their first games of the season when Chris Hughton was still in charge. It was a narrow 2-1 win. And I know how long ago it was, because we saw David Brooks on the score sheet for Bournemouth. So that gives you a perspective how long ago it was when these two sides played against each other. I've got to say, it is very, very tense. But if I had to give a prediction, I tell you what, the most incredible result would be if Forest were to win, because basically what this means now is that if Forest better Bournemouth's result, they're up. But if Bournemouth take a draw, then it definitely gives Bournemouth an advantage, especially if they can not lose to Millwall as well. I know Forest have got a better game in the final day of the season, but I think Bournemouth would prefer that. I think Bournemouth would prefer to draw their last 2 games rather than really risk, losing everything, because if they lose, it definitely gives Forest the upper hand. And Forest, by the form that they're in right now, they definitely would be fancying their chances. As a prediction, my head is telling me 1-1. But my heart is saying that I really want a very entertaining underdog story to end. And it'll be a 2-1 victory to Forest. I'm actually going to go in my head and I'm going to back down and say a 1-1 draw. I think it's going to be a very unpopular prediction for most predictors. I think a lot of people will be predicting either a Bournemouth or Forest win, because a win for either one of these teams is huge in their season. But I'm going to say it's going to be a 1-1 draw, and it's going to be like a chess game, a very cagey game. So that's what I'm predicting. But guys, make sure you predict that game in the comments down below as well, because that game would also be going towards the points of the Prediction League as well, which I'll be showing the updated standings to the final day of the season on the Wednesday after these 2 midweek games have concluded. But guys, that wraps it up for today's video today. If you guys enjoyed what you saw, please give the video a like. It just tremendously helps the channel. Please do hit the subscribe button if you've not done so. It does really help. Please keep your eye out on potential watch-alongs that I'll be doing this week. There is a couple of watch-alongs that I've got planned that will be taking place this week. And please also share this channel to as many people as you can. All of that helps too. So, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary for the end of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.